Welcome back to Roompact's ResEdChat podcast, a platform to showcase people doing great work and talk about hot topics in residence life and college student housing. I'm your host, Crystal Lay. I use the she, her series pronouns. We are in the age of busyness. As housing professionals, it seems like we're busy all the time. There's stuff that we're managing. Our brain has to shift back and forth, meeting. And then outside of our job, we have all these things that we're engaging in, whether it's going to school, it's a side gig, it's kids, workout routines, etc. And so I got to thinking, how is it possible to manage those things effectively, efficiently, in a way that really leads to well-being and a really healthy integration? And so I thought about, who do I know that does it really well and can offer up some tips on what that could look like to manage multiple priorities and do it well when you work in housing. And so with that, I'll have our guest introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deanna Hughes. I use the she, her series of pronouns, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Associate Director for Residential Education at the University of South Florida-Tampa. I am a proud partner, parent, and student affairs professional, and I look forward to engaging today.
Thank you for joining me. I know one of the things that you're going to speak about the most is working full time and also being in a doctoral program who's in the dissertating phase. And so I just can't wait to hear how you manage that, knowing the work that we do. So the first question, what inspires you to pursue a doctoral degree while working full time in housing and residence life?
Yes, so for me, it was the people in my life that mean the world to me. My mom was already manifesting when I was in grad school, and I thought that I was done with school. But she was like, Dr. Jackson, which was my surname, that sounds real good. I got a ring to it. You're gonna go get that degree. And I was like, I don't know, mom. And then fast forward, really good friends of mine. It came to a point to where I was walking to my car, ran into the now newly minted Dr. Alethea Oliphant, and we just started talking about just life and next steps. And I was telling her how I got to Florida State, and one of my goals is to get into a doctoral degree. And she flat out asked me, why had I not started? Because I'm years in now. And I started telling her, well, I got the kids and I'm trying to do this with, my partner. And then I like to do these things with family reunions and I'm helping out. And she was like, okay, so when are you going to do something for you? Right? There's no better time than now. And for whatever reason, out of the many times I heard it before, that time sent the message and the signal. And my next step was having informational meetings with folks who was in a program I was interested in, just to see, is this really what I wanted to get myself into? And it was folks who were also partnered, folks who had children and were also working full time in other capacities of student affairs, not housing, but different other fields, right? And based on what they said, I was all in when I realized that the program that I chose was very much focused on supporting that full-time working person that had family and all the things. So that was like the thing that inspired me to not just think about it, but go ahead and do it.
So it sounds like you were encouraged and felt motivated. You did some homework, right? Does this make
Hmm.
sense for me and everything happening in my life? And so the key is find something that makes sense and you can feel supported. That's what I'm pulling from that. It's
Absolutely.
a key part of that decision making. So how do you go about, so you're in the program, you're working full time, you mentioned you have kiddos, a partner. How do you prioritize tasks when everything feels urgent, right? Work deadlines, doctoral assignments, personal life. Like, how do you prioritize what to do?
Yeah, so for me, I've already been equipped with self-discipline. And I'm a lister by heart. Like the way I start most of my mornings after thanking God, drinking a gut full of water, affirming myself is, what is it that I need to accomplish today? I'm looking at the things that were on the list from the day before and the day before after that, and I'm prioritizing. So I'm really big on capitalizing on Calendly, which is a source I use that syncs my work calendar to that personal calendar. And with being family oriented and children having homework and cheer practice and softball, like all the things, we also have a calendar at the house. It's the family calendar. So me and the partner have those conversations throughout the week where they understand when I'm at work, I'm focusing on work. Every now and again, I may take some of my lunchtime to check in and see how things are and or do 15 minutes of something related to my actual study, like writing or reading. But after work, I'm all in with dinner, homework. And when we get to that 8 o'clock at night time frame, from 8 until usually like midnight, that's when I'm locked in to accomplish the baby steps of what I need to do for dissertating. I'm not an early bird, but I've also challenged myself at times to get up an hour and a half, 2 hours early to block off morning time to just see how my focus is on doing things that's specifically focused on the dissertation on weekdays, work days. And outside of the weekends is when I just carve out blocks of times throughout the day for family, for self to decompress, do what I want to do, go shoot hoops, go bowling, go get my nails done, and then time to specifically focus on the dissertation. I'm in the writing phase now, so it's like just write, recode, align, things of that nature. So that's what has worked for me as far as prioritizing conversations with family, relying on my calendars and the software to help me to sync things to where they're talking to each other so I'm not double booking myself. And then making sure that my support system understands that this is priority. Now, working in housing, there are times where, we have to pivot, which is why I personally don't do a lot of my schoolwork, if any at all, if I'm being honest, when I'm at work. When I'm at work, I'm all in with work because you think you might have a block of time to focus on things, and then there'll be a knock on the door or there'll be a phone call. So that's something that I personally haven't adapted, even though I have been supported by former supervisors to take advantage of that extra 30 minutes after lunch. Go ahead and, do something for dissertation and practice. But for those who are considering, you could also prioritize blocking off time in the lunch, after lunch, to focus on your work if that's what works for you.
I love that. So I also heavily rely on my calendar,
Mhm.
and also post-it notes to remind me of what to do. I don't know if that's time management, but it keeps me organized. So
Yeah.
are there other, and you mentioned calendar
Yeah.
words. Oh my gosh. So are there other time management strategies or tools that you found effective?
So for me, aside from Calendly, utilizing like the Microsoft Outlook calendar, um, I've tried different things like notes with the Google account. Also, like my smartphone, reminders are helpful there. So just like an alarm, I name what the alarm is. That kind of helps me to know, time to do XYZ, right? There have been moments where I've literally put the words prioritize self,
Mm.
right? Take a walk to nowhere, go drink water. Like I've had to name alarms. I got more alarms on my phone than a little bit that helps me to humanize like turning off when you're in go mode because I'm one of those persons that is a doer. I don't like to stop until I finish. So those alarms in my phone has also helped me out. And then my husband is one of the best accountability partners I can have because he's very nonsensical. So he will flat out tell me, hey, you've been sitting there for a while, like go stretch your legs. Or I know I usually bring you water this time, but since it's the weekend, get up, walk, because it's just good for you. You've been sitting there for a while. So as far as prioritization, I kind of keep it simple with the Calendly, Outlook calendar, and then utilizing the home, like the physical, we're going to write on it with the dry erase setup, so that as I'm communicating with my children, so they can understand, even though they don't all the way understand, they can see like mommy's time means don't bother, I'm uninterrupted. And if I know that they can't honor that, then I prioritize leaving the shared space of home so I know that I can truly focus.
Yeah, so finding a place and space where you can focus is important. Also, you talked about having another human who notices, like if you just need to move. And
Yes.
so I think whether that be at home or in the workspace, finding an accountability partner or accountability buddy
Mhm.
to just say, hey, you've been working on that for, an hour, or oh my gosh, it's 5:30, like go home, I think can be really helpful too. So
Mhm.
I want to ask you this question. So you're about to finish your program, which I love for you and celebrate you for that. If you could go back to the start of your program, what would you do differently to manage your time and energy more effectively?
I would definitely set stronger boundaries when it comes to my little humans. I convinced myself that I could be in the house, close myself off in a space, and accomplish things, but that did not work out well. Um, Going to the library or going back to campus, someplace that just gives me a good lighting, good focus, places I can plug in, not too far to get me some tea, coffee, access to restrooms. Like finding that place for me was the library on campus. Finding that earlier would allow me to save a lot of burning the midnight oil when I didn't have to at certain junctures. So that's one thing I would have done differently. And then just been more communicative about why, because they love them some mommy, right? Mommy can think she's about to watch a show or think she's about to take a nap and they just want to be around me. So helping them to understand like this is something that I'm doing for myself. No, I'm not lonely because I was like, we don't want you to be lonely. I'm not lonely. I'm focused and I can only focus in a quiet environment. But that's one thing that I would have definitely changed off the rip, as well as being open to other tools to help me to move quicker through some of the pieces in certain courses. I was afraid of the unknown, especially with AI of any kind. But if I knew about quillbot.com earlier on, to me, it would have saved a lot of heartache of trying to figure it out and do it by myself. So anything that assists with helping you to get beyond brain fog, which is a lot of the things that are, it depends on how you use them, but there are a lot of really good software that can help with that. But those are the two main things that come to mind. Not being afraid of AI and how it can help me to not have to feel like I need to figure it out if I'm at a block. Use Google Scholar. Like it's not a bad thing. Use Chat GPT integrally. It's not a bad thing. Rely on being okay with being away from little people or folks who will pull on you for things to focus fully on yourself and make sure it's an environment that's conducive to you being able to focus. Those are the main two things that come to mind.
Yes, and I like those pieces. I know for myself when I find that I need to focus or my energy is a little lower, I will come into my office and close my door. So I see the parallel there and finding a space or creating
Hmm.
a space when you're able to really focus, or putting on do not disturb on your teams if you're a team's
Facts.
campus. So what are like knowing and then also listening to your body, right? Like what times of day can I focus the most? And then I like the piece that I think about meetings. We're in meetings all day. And
Hmm.
so what are the things that you can do to recharge yourself and be fresh and ready to move between the different things that can happen? So I like these tips that you shared on how you can manage your time and then that energy piece. Really
Yes.
knowing yourself and carving out the time so you can show up the best way you need to. So you have this to-do list, I imagine, all these
Hmm.
things that are happening. And some of them, like, being in a doc program is years long, right?
Yes.
Or if someone has a side gig, it's like, okay, maybe it's every 2 weeks you get that paycheck. But like in the interim, when things feel hard or there's a lot that's happening, or oh my gosh, this semester there's been a lot of crisis stuff. I'm just waiting to
Hmm.
get to December. How do you celebrate small wins in the interim, professionally and academically along the way to kind of keep you going and motivated?
Yes. A perfect example is something I actually did last night. Up until I want to say maybe a year and a half in my doctoral program, working full time at a previous institution, I didn't know how to take breaks from working to work because that's essentially what it felt like. And I decided to adapt one day a week, Wednesdays, to where I would do whatever brings me joy. It could be going to the movies, For me last night, it was going bowling and doing the unlimited until I couldn't bowl anymore, working it all out, whatever stress I had, right? Hitting those pins. Other times is shooting hoops. I love basketball. And other times it's like I'm about to treat myself to something sweet, walk around the lake, take me a nap. But those are the things that have really helped me when it just seems like it's so much. And then having like my circle to just process and sometimes lament with, like, hey, y'all, this is hard. I told myself I was going to do this, and I looked at that calendar, didn't pick up a pen, didn't flip open the laptop. I'm still sitting in my snuggie and getting the reassurance that it's okay to rest. It's all right. You in it for the long haul. You can modify. And this weekend, I will be modifying my timeline again and being okay with that. But what has helped me is being in great conversation with my major professor and the committee that supports me so that they can see Deanna outside of Deanna, the doctoral candidate, right? Like, here's what's happening in the world of university housing. We just closed. We have spring cancellations happening, right? We're revving up for spring training. So during these time frames, I'm exhausted. So I can't do these things with the rigor or by the time I thought in an ideal standpoint when I built it out. But hearing them say it's fine, you can pivot, but stick to these micro goals and also adjusting to micro goals instead of looking so much at big picture. That's something that's been successful.
Yeah, put it in chunks, I think, is a
Yes.
really helpful way to think about it. Because if you're like, oh my gosh, in 5 years, I'm going to have this thing, that's really hard. But I also heard you say community is important, support,
Yes.
um, and again, chunking things out. So, what are your long term goals after completing your doctoral degree? And how do you see it shaping your future in housing?
Yeah, so I love to present, to share. By default, I'm the family storyteller. I love to learn all the things. So the initial things I'm going to do outside of celebrating that I did that is continue to write some of the pieces that I had to set aside in the parking lot, right? That were invaluable, but not necessarily directly in alignment with what my two research questions were focused on. Journal articles, CHO report, talking stick. I am an ambivert at its finest. So when I'm peopled out, the thing I naturally do is reflect and journal. So just putting it to paper continuously. I do plan to look back at that last chapter that talks about, implications for future and things that can be considered to continue to talk about and or do, put some actions to the dissertation and practice. I want to connect with other Black women senior housing officers to continue the conversation when it's institute season time or symposium or conference season time, webinar season time, right? Not necessarily on big stage or kuhoa moments, but even year round, right? Those are the things I'm most excited about doing. And then having conversations with colleagues who are still on the fence. Like, should I not? And helping them to understand that it has a lot to do with your why, and then your ability to make sure you're surrounded by good people and you got good discipline and some organizational skills. If you got those, you will be successful, and your journey is your journey.
So your research sounds really interesting because based on your response, I'm guessing that that's what you're going to be looking into. And I think that's a really awesome way to contribute to our field and to the literature. So thank you for that important work and excited to learn and hear more about it as you continue on your journey. So if you could really sum it up or talk about like this whole time management and again, energy piece, what's the benefit, right? Like, do you feel that you you feel better, you're healthier, like what's the cost or the reason why this topic is important to you? Does that question make sense?
So the topic that I'm focusing on for my dissertation.
Yeah, the topic you're focusing on, and because I imagine, like to hold people's stories or delve into that topic, how do you care for yourself in that? Or if it feels like you're close to it, but then also in addition to that, like time management, like what's the benefit to really being thoughtful about your time and how you spend it? So kind of two
Um,
questions there.
Yeah, as well. So my topic is focusing on the pathways that Black women senior housing officers in the southern region of the United States, specifically our Research One, Research Two institutions. I'm curious to know how would they describe their journey into that senior housing officer role, right? And then my secondary question is curious to know about their current thoughts on the representation of Black women who serve at these Research One, Research Two institutions in the southern region of the US. And a huge part of that is I am an aspiring Black woman senior housing officer. I stumbled into it like many of us and fell in love with it. A lot of the skills that I came in with, I felt like I was really nurtured in housing, challenged nonetheless, but it complemented a lot of my values. And as a result, I continue to pour and give happily. So what I do have to be cognizant of, because being an insider within, is that it's okay to take deep breaths and exhale. It's okay to take a step back. It's also okay to have my thoughts or my assumptions, right? The positionality you come in, be stretched. Cognitive dissonance is real, right? And assumptions will always get you if you let them. So coming in open-minded. When I tell you I am ever grateful for the time that a lot of the women have spent with me so that I can share and learn and put it out there, right? Even just staying in contact with them about how to honor the importance of anonymity, while still making sure that what needs to be understood is fully held onto by our profession as a whole. But the way I do that is continuing to journal. Like when I'm done with sitting in, the hours of interviews or coding, I'm always taking that step back to just write what I'm feeling, what came up, what I'm questioning, what I had no idea about that I need to dive into, or what I'm challenged with. And also being okay with doing nothing, which is something that's always been a hard thing for me to do. But embracing rest and understanding the power of rest, especially with hearing the stories about how when you give a lot, sometimes it can impact your physical, your spiritual, your mental, your social health. So I'm learning and trying to adapt a lot of things in real time, thanks to the stories, right? And I'm being reinvigorated through it all, even though it is a lot. But remembering just to stay communicative to my work. In one-on-ones, I talk about it, right? With folks that I supervise, when they're like, I'm considering, I'm thinking, I challenge and support them and saying like, hey, it can be done, but here's how you count the cost, right? And then at the end of the day, like giving myself grace and encouraging others to do the same when you are an achiever, right? And you're used to just kind of moving at a certain pace, but life or unexpected things causes you to pivot or slow down or sometimes just come to a full halt. Being okay with that and being present in the moment with the people you love and the things that you love, because you're going to get finished, right? It's just a matter of knowing how to take a step back and enjoy being in a moment with loved ones and things loved. I hope that answered your question though. Yeah.
That was amazing, because what I'm pulling from your answer is that time management is really sitting down and thinking about all of the things that have to be done and the things that are important and make you human, and then
Yes.
making sure that you make it all count. I also hear rest, right?
Hmm.
Time management includes rest and, connecting with the people who, rejuvenate you. I'll use your word, right? The folks who, remind you of who you are, and pour into you versus take
Hmm.
out of you. Because I think sometimes the work can take out of you. And so how are you, who are the folks who are helping to refill your cup in addition to you doing that for yourself? And so when I think of time management, you named, I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to go bowling. I'm going to be mindful of my lunch breaks. Hey, put lunch breaks in your calendar, right?
Yes,
Put
please do.
admin time in your calendar. So I have learned so much from you and some things that I know I'm going to incorporate into my practice. So yes, you answered the question. Um,
Awesome.
So we're going to come to the end of our time. So if folks want to learn more about being a housing professional and pursuing a doctoral program and or thinking about time management, do you have any recommendations for where they can learn more?
I feel like you can find so much just in the world of Google. Like I could name books or different podcasts, but what I will say is, people, please do not sleep on the invaluable resource that people around you are, right? So if you're considering and you're interested in a particular school on that campus, go meet with a professor, go meet with the dean, request even a virtual informational meeting outside of just looking at what's on the website. If you notice that someone a couple levels above you has their PhD or EDD or MBA, and you're curious, like ask them about that. Challenge yourself to take the initiative to say, like, hey, I believe I'm doing good work, right? I believe I have capacity to take on more. Can I audit a class, right? Or supervisor, can you support me in this experience that will allow me to see if this is something I really want to do? Let me register for one course, right? Just to kind of put my toe in the water. But those are some things that I would say beyond taking advantage of podcasts or finding special groups in the world of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, that would allow you to get good insight on a myriad of perspectives of what it's like, what are some things to consider, what are the challenges that you could readily be mindful of, and then what at the core you just need to have in yourself to get beyond the all but dissertation if you are considering maintaining, working in university housing or student affairs in general across the board, and going into a doctoral program.
Sounds like communication and leaning
Yep.
into your network and just start building a network today. If you're like, I don't have a network, start today. So this was such a delightful conversation, lots of good information, great information. So thank you, Deanna, for joining me today. Um,
My pleasure.
and to all of you, thanks for joining us on this episode of ResEdChat. If you have an idea of a topic or a person that you'll like us to have on the show, please let us know by reaching out to Roompact. Take care.